Bill Watterson, the artist behind Calvin and Hobbes, he did a comic recently that I find very validating. It was about selling out to the corporate beast and applying your potential and your skills only in service of creating propaganda for IngSoc. And it starts out where an obvious younger surrogate for himself is drawing what looks like a spaceman spiff landscape, but it pulls back to reveal that it's a Jeep ad. And he's right away talking about how artists in his position with his innate talent have to make this choice whether or not they want to use it to make money, or they want to use it to get their values and their ethos out into the world for other people to partake in. And Bill Watterson very famously eschewed fame and fortune. And he very famously turned down an offer from George Lucas and Steven Spielberg to do an animated Calvin and Hobbes film. And as much as you think as a Calvin and Hobbes fan that you might want that, I don't. I completely understand and respect why he didn't want to do that. And he reveals it later in the comic, where he says that people who try to go their own way and make a living their own way are often seen as eccentric and even subversive. And that's how I'm treated. I have a friend who's been very successful in tech. And she's asked me not to dox her in any significant way, so I won't. I respect that. But if anyone's wondering where this animosity I have towards that sort of Palo Alto technocrat, elitist, libertarian mindset comes from, it's because from her I've heard so much of this Nazi-like social Darwinist worldview about how people who don't have a marketable skill, like a skill that can be used by IngSoc, that you literally deserve to die. And people like Steven Crowder, I just did a video like this last night, he argues that people who can't afford healthcare should just die. And that it's their fault because they literally couldn't wrestle that care from the system. He's not willing to acknowledge that that system is totally unfair and totally set up to support people that are already in a very inclusive or exclusive minority of aristocracy. And he would argue that it's all about clamoring or climbing this invisible ladder of success, which Watterson also addresses in the comic. And he's like, don't stress yourself climbing this invisible ladder that other people insist exists before you. And he's like, you're going to hear a lot about how your skills and your potential can be used in service of IngSoc and in service of creating propaganda for someone else, and in service of basically as a tool for someone else's will and someone else's whim. And they ascribe to this very bleak, fatalist, Winston-like hopelessness from 1984 about how IngSoc has already won. And you might as well accept your place as a cog within it, or you deserve to die without healthcare. And I find that to be an extremely disgusting, isolationist, childlike, Little Lord Fauntleroy worldview. This sort of spoiled trust fund kitty who thinks that everyone who doesn't have a trust fund should literally die. And they don't feel like they should be criticized for that. Like that tech friend I told you about has called me negative, or even the most negative person she's ever spoken to, because I tell her that social Darwinism is evil. And that insisting that half of the human herd should be culled from a sheer lack of resources is not evil or Nazi-like, when it clearly is. Like, Joseph Mengele would sit across a table from you and express that ethos with glee. He would have a cigar hanging off his lip being like, yeah, people without healthcare, fuck them. I like to use them in my experiments. They're basically rats. They're not even human. Fuck them. They're not as good looking. They're not as smart. They're disabled. They have issues. So if they're not grist for the mill, if you're not going to melt them down into Soylent Green, if they're not going to be used as rocket fuel for Elon Musk to get to Mars, then they might as well just get out of the fucking way. They have no utility. They have no purpose. And these are people whose contribution is like YouTube videos, or working for Uber and things like that. These like a card table of technocrats that feel like they're better than everyone else because of their trust funds and their crony connections. And it makes me really upset. It makes me really angry. It makes me really angry on that level I talked about in my Crowder video about how there's no Superman. There's only Lex Luthor. And like Lex Luthor gets to operate as though he shouldn't be criticized. Because of people like Crowder that are like, just do whatever you want, fuck everybody else. They're just going to be melted down into Elon Musk's rocket fuel anyway. It's all they're good for. And you read a comic like this, and it's like, I don't feel as useless. I don't feel like I should be melted down into Soylent Green. I feel like because I chose to make a living in a more noble, humble fashion, that it's not like I deserve to be destroyed, or I don't deserve to live. And I feel like so many people like Jordan Peterson and anyone who shares even a fraction of his ethos, they really believe that. You know, they want to see half the population of this earth dead in the street, and they want to step over them feeling like they're better than them, somehow. And I feel like that disgusting worldview should have a counterbalance to it represented. I think that egalitarian humanism should be represented with every bit as much passion as these evil, sadistic fascists. And can we finally change libtards to... Can we finally make libertarians the new libtards, please? You know, can we stop calling liberals libtards and just start calling fucking libertarians libtards? These pieces of isolationist shit. These people that just constantly tell you how they're better than you because they have this extremely specialized skill set that might not be marketable in 5 or 10 years. It might fall out of fashion. It's so funny how you talk to these technocrats and it's like, what if you get hit by a drunk driver tomorrow who smashes up your hands? And, you know, and you lose your ability to type as quickly or code as quickly. And suddenly you're without utility in the brave new world. Suddenly you're without purpose in the brave new world. What then? They're going to instantly be in line for the dole like, where's my paycheck? Where's my check? Where's my dole money? You know, well, I can't type anymore. What am I supposed to do? Well, die in the street and let Steven Crowder and Jordan Peterson step over you and spit on your body. And it's like, there's not many famous people out there like Bill Watterson who will be like, no, you're not crazy. You know, don't let people like Steven Crowder make you feel like a weak loser because you chose a more humble, self-sacrificing mode of existing. And that he just wants to be in your face as this Howard Stern ripoff and make a lot of money doing it, as this morning zoo crew clown. And he thinks he deserves to live and he deserves health care more than people who break a sweat for a living and actually do a hard day's work. And it's interesting that this Bill Watterson comic is one of the only crumbs of validation that I've gotten in the world that I can think of recently. I'm constantly told that egalitarian humanism, like my core ethos and beliefs, make me completely alone in the world. I'm told that constantly, that because people are so selfish and so childish and so superficial, that me having any self-sacrificing depth at all makes me like an alien. And that me being willing to, you know, work in jobs that I know actually contribute something as opposed to like making me a lot of money or making me famous. I don't know. I'm so fucking sick of Lex Luthor. I'm sick of his toadies and his flunkies. You know, people sucking dick for power and just trying to get a little piece. These shameless shills, you know, who tell me I'm a loser because I'm not trying to get rich. I'm not selling out my peers. Thank you, Bill Watterson, for making me feel like a little less alone in the world.